Hey, what's going on, everybody? Once again, my name is WaleAde, and this is another edition of Religion and Politics. And today we're going to talk about a serious topic that is actually affecting a lot of us today. As a matter of fact, I meant to do this video a few weeks ago. I actually meant to just have this conversation because this is a very vital conversation that we need to have. And it's about police brutality. And so, as many of you know, you probably seen the video. You probably saw the different angles of the Tyre Nichols situation. As a matter of fact, I remember I was actually in seminary when the George Floyd situation happened. And I remember watching the video that same morning, and I know it had a massive effect on all of us. But when I told you like that was a time that COVID was happening, I was out in the middle of nowhere because the seminary was out kind of in the rural areas. And a deep depression just fell on my soul as I watched that video, as I watched the plea of George Floyd during the time when Derek Chauvin had his knee on his neck, and just how black lives just don't seem to be as honored or revered as other lives. And it hit me to my core, and it's something that I know, being an Adventist pastor, a lot of times we are not encouraged to be political or not encouraged to get too much into politics. But this is not a politics issue, in my opinion. This is a life and death issue. And just like we're pastors and we talk about the gospel and we worry about people's spiritual well-being after they pass on from this earth, we should be worried about people's physical well-being as they're still living on this earth. And so I think this is an important topic for us to talk about. And so we are going to talk about it today. One of the things that is unfortunate about these situations is a lot of times, when it comes to the way that we are viewed, the way that we as black people are seen in society, oftentimes it just feels like we are seen in a lesser light. As a matter of fact, there's studies that have shown that there's a perception that when it comes to black people, that we have a higher pain tolerance. And so sometimes in the medical field, we're not given the care that we are afforded. We're not given the same pain management plans that other people get, because we are just, for some reason, because of the color of our skin, seen as being able to resist or able to withstand that type of pain. But there's also other studies that show that we are viewed by the masses and even ourselves as being more aggressive, as being more violent. And that's why you always hear, the monikers of the angry black man or the angry black woman. And it's because that because of the perception that has been placed on us in society, a lot of times we are viewed as more dangerous. As a matter of fact, if you see a black person with their hood on, a lot of times even our own people will look at that as something to take note of or take caution of. But if you see a skater boy, who may be of a different hue, of a different race, you may still have that same inkling. But the thing about it is you won't feel a lot of times as threatened by them. And so a lot of times we have to talk about these interactions and these biases that we have when it comes to policing and when it comes to the way that we view ourselves and also how society views us. And so in the Tyre Nichols situation, we saw with the pullover, we saw him get out the car. We saw him resist to some degree. We did see him resist arrest. But one thing that someone said a long time ago, resisting arrest should be a charge and not a death sentence. And too many times we see that these things end up in death. And what I want to say, I do want to say this because I know there's going to be people that are going to support the police no matter what they do. I've worked in a juvenile detention center before. And one of the things I do want to say is that oftentimes, things can happen within the blink of an eye. And as a supervisor in the juvenile detention center and the youth specialist, one of the things that I had to do was I had to act on my feet, because anything could happen at any given moment in time. And the first thing that you have to do is make sure that you are safe and that the other people around you are safe as well. And that was even in a more controlled environment. So there was only so much that could happen. But I do know that sometimes you just have to make split-second decisions. And split-second decisions can either be good decisions or sometimes they can be bad decisions. And so, it is a hard job to have. So I don't want to negate the difficulty of being a police officer. But I do want to say that there has to be more accountability and training. As a matter of fact, I understand that they had to chase him down. They had to, neutralize the threat. But the thing about it is that a lot of times police officers have the leeway to act above the law. And what we saw there in that video, and one of the angles, was that we saw that Tyre Nichols, after he was already handcuffed, was beaten over and over and over again by the police officers that were there. And that's something that there's no excuse for, there's no toleration for. Once the threat has been subdued, it is then time for the police officers to book the culprit, or if there were any injuries sustained, then the medical personnel are supposed to attend to that person, because every person in the United States is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And so it just seems like sometimes there's extra force that has been allotted and allowed. We see that in some past legislation in New York, like the stop and frisk that happened in mostly minority neighborhoods. Or we just see the higher rates of death when it comes to people of our color in the interactions with police. And so this is something that I think is not just a societal issue, but I think it should also be a church issue as well. As a matter of fact, it's always cool to be aloof and to be indifferent until that situation or that tragedy hits your front door. And so I want to just give a direct message to those who think that we shouldn't, as religious leaders, be in politics, or we shouldn't be in these social conversations. But my thing is, I think this the fact that we sometimes avoid these tough topics. I think sometimes the fact that we're not on the forefront of speaking out against certain injustices, that we've lost our credibility and we've lost our influence with the people. And so, it's something that we have to grieve with people. The Bible actually talks about, mourn with those who mourn. And so as people are losing their lives at the hands of law enforcement, as people are getting mistreated by some of the systems in society, we as church, we as the church, and we as people of God are supposed to be there mourning with the people, supporting the people, and actually speaking out for the people when things like this happen. And so I'm not going to stay on here too long. I just simply want to give just a few pointers on what we can do, because we have to do something in order to save our kids. And so one of the things that I just want to say that we should do when we are in order to help out those that are, to change the system from the police brutality that we're seeing. We got to stop the deaths that are happening. A traffic stop should not end in a death. And once again, resisting arrest should be a charge and not a death sentence. And so one of the things that I think is vital for us to do is that we have to, first and foremost, we got to teach our children about police interactions. And this is very key. I think, as a community, sometimes we leave these conversations unsaid. And unfortunately, in the Black community, a lot of times you have to have this conversation with your children. As a matter of fact, I used to live in Alabama. And I've had a few instances where I was targeted, clearly pulled over for no reason. In fact, that's happened here in Maryland as well, just simply because it seemed like the police officers were trying to find something. I remember one time I had a license plate. The reason I was stopped was because my license plate was crooked. I remember another time I was stopped because my fog light was out, but the police officer was behind me, following me for blocks, and then he tried to pass me, and then when he saw that my fog light was out, then he put his lights on and pulled me over. And so one of the things that we gotta teach our children is that sometimes you will be pulled over for no good reason at all. Yeah, unfortunately, the police have the power to subdue you for that moment in time. And so we have to prepare our children. I know sometimes, we get emotional. Sometimes we get upset that we're pulled over for no good reason. But we have to let them know that it is a possibility that you can be pulled over for absolutely no reason. And unfortunately, that's the society that we live in. And so how do we prepare our children for this? One of the things that I've been taught, when it comes to really just being intentional about the interactions with police. And in fact, I hate the fact that we even have to do this, but this is one of the things I've been taught. So when you are basically being pulled over by a police officer or law enforcement, one of the good things that I've been taught is to turn your car off. Yeah, because you want to neutralize, especially if somebody already has in their brain or in their subconscious that you could be a possible threat just based on your appearance, just based on the hue of your skin. You got to reduce the amount of threat as much as possible. And so turning off your vehicle shows that you're not just going to pull off real quick, that you're actually in a place, unfortunately, I have to say this, of submission, right? So that they can come and do whatever it is they came to do for the moment. And turning off your car also shows, like, if anything goes wrong, right, there is some evidence that you were not trying to resist. And I hate to say that you have to take responsibility, but I think until we get more accountability, until we get more legislation, this is just one of the things that you have to do. The second thing that I was taught is that take your keys out of, not only do you turn your car off, take your keys out of the ignition and put them on top of your dashboard. So not only is your car stopped, but your keys are on top of the dashboard. And so once again, there's no threat of you running away. The second thing that I was told is always have your hands visible. And so don't go searching, to the left or to the right in your glove compartment or whatever for your license. But as the officer is coming up, just place your hands on 10 and 2 and make sure that you roll all your windows down first. That's another step that I was given. And then make sure your hands are on 10 and 2 so that the officer can clearly see inside of your vehicle and can clearly see your hands. And then when the officer comes up, and then of course they're going to ask you, hopefully they're going by protocol, for your license, registration, proof of insurance. Then ask the officer, is it okay? It's here. It's either in my pocket or it's in my glove compartment. Can I go reach for it, right? And then do that, slowly, and make sure that you take whatever documents that you need out. And like I said, it's unfortunate that every child doesn't have to go through this process. It's unfortunate that every child is not going to be pulled over for absolutely no good reason. But the fact that this is the reality that we live in, this is one of the things that we have to do in order to stay safe. Now, the second thing that we have to do is not only teach our children about police interactions, right? Also, don't get argumentative. Just do what they say, because you can always file a complaint the next morning. Make sure you get badge numbers. Make sure you get information. But don't start the fight there, because in that moment in time, they have the power and the authority. And so the second thing that you need to do, once again, I said you can always make calls later, is that you need to contact your local legislators. So a lot of times local legislators, there's city hall meetings, there's city council meetings, there's county council meetings. There's a lot of meetings that happen in your cities, in your counties, in your states. And you have to now start writing letters, writing petitions, making sure that you have the ear of your legislators to make sure that there are laws that keep the police officers accountable. Right? If you've ever felt like you've been discriminated against, or there's anything that you feel like you've been pulled over unjustly, make sure that you write those things down. Write down the instances, write down the badge numbers, and that you report those things later on that day or the next day, that while it's still fresh in your mind, so that there can be a written paper trail on the conduct of officers that are behaving in an unofficer-like way. And so you really got to put the pressure on your local legislators, because that's the only way that you'll be able to have the accountability and the change and the voice that you need. The next thing that you want to do, so this is for churches, because I really want to help churches to help the community police relationship, is that as churches, we have to, get to know our local police department. And individuals can do that too. Go visit, go talk, go have conversations, go set up a meeting, have sit downs, do whatever it takes. But it's harder for an officer, right, of the law to act in an to act in an unethical way if they actually are familiar with the person that they are pulling over. And of course, you won't know all the police officers in churches. You won't know everybody, but it's good to know the police officers and let them know you, and try to do things, especially as churches, maybe joint community police events, maybe back to school programs, maybe, Christmas giveaways, but do stuff with the police officers so that they can meet you all and they can meet the community as well. Because we got to build relationships in order to stop some of the killing that's happening with our people. But not only should you get to know the local police department, but one of the things that you also need to advocate is for things like diversity, equity, and inclusion courses that should be mandatory for all police officers. I read a story the other day about, I used to live in Huntsville, Alabama, and the police there, how they were saying that they were not equipped for the different cases that they would come across, especially like mental health and different things like that. And so these police officers, they're trained in a lot of things, but they need to be trained more on mental health. They need to be trained more on diversity, equity, and inclusion to really understand the communities that they are policing, the communities that they are serving. And so we got to encourage that they go through some extensive training to learn more about the culture of the people that they'll be serving, because it's easy to do certain things when you're detached from the community. But when you're a part of the community, when you understand the community, when you take time to learn who the community is, it really helps with the police interactions of the people there. And last but not least, us as church people, we have to put this on our agenda, is that we got to pray for those who are in our communities, our young people. We got to pray for, the interactions with the police. We got to pray for the police too, because they have a hard job. There's a lot of things that they encounter on a day-to-day basis. And so we got to cover our administrators. We got to cover our police officers. We got to cover our children. We got to cover our communities in prayer, because only God can really bring peace to a land. And I think there's so much civil unrest. There's so much just tiredness of all of these killings, all of these headlines, all of these murders. And, as a man of peace, I just want to see things stop. I just want to see children go back home to their parents. I want to see mothers go back home to their husbands and their children, and fathers go back to their wife and their children, and children go back to their parents at the end of the day, because all it takes is one interaction, right? One police officer one of our children coming into a disagreement or argument, and unfortunately, a lot of times these things turn fatal. And so I just want to put the onus, number one, on the police officers. I understand you have a hard job, but at the same time, understand your bias, understand your unconscious bias, understand the communities that you serve, know the people, take time to know who you're serving, so that you can have a better idea of how to effectively police those districts that you are supposed to be serving and protecting. For us as parents, just really pleading that you have these conversations with your children early and often. Don't wait too long before that they understand that simple interactions with police officers, because of the power that they have, because of the weapons that they wield, if there's any type of resistance, unfortunately, there's the possibility of it turning deadly. And so we want to make sure that we prepare our kids and help them to get through the moment. Remember, get through the moment alive, and you can always file your complaint or file your grievance after the moment has passed. And last but not least, remember to the children, right? Because police officers have guns and the authority to use them, because police officers in the moment in time have the power, we gotta stop fighting back and resisting in the moment. Now, hear me. I understand there's injustices. I understand there's things that are unfair. It happens to all of us, but it's about making it out of that moment, because once something happens, or once there's a resist, or once somebody is killed, we have another hashtag, we have another funeral, and we have so many people who are grieving now the life that is lost. I remember I was driving from Alabama to, I think it was Michigan, and I was crossing through Tennessee. I remember I just had pulled over not too long ago. It was in the middle of the night. It was like 2 a.m. and I had fallen asleep, but I got back on the road. And I remember I was on the road and I was driving through Tennessee. And as I was driving, once again, this always seems to always happen to me. I had it was just me and him on the road, literally. A police officer drive behind me for a while. Then they came beside me and paused, and then they turned their lights on. Now, this is 2 a.m. in the South, in Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere, with not really too many cars out there. And so I remember, I think I was visiting somebody at the time for a break, so I had some bags in my back seat. And I remember the flashlight coming, the police officer walking up, and just asking me for my license and registration. And so I remember, I gave it to him. He went back, he checked it. Then he asked me, now this is 2 a.m, can you please step out the car? Right? I could have went back and forth, because there was really no reason for him to pull me out. Absolutely none. I could have went back and forth on it, but I said, okay, I'm about to step out the car. Right? And then so, one thing I had learned is, they have to, because a lot of them, they operate out of fear, right? And so their fear shouldn't be our responsibility, but like I said, survive the moment, right? So I remember he told me to, he wants to pat me down, right? So I could have complained. I could have said I didn't do anything, like I could have went on and on. But I knew that, number one, I was bigger than this cop, right? And number two, I already knew that, with him asking all these questions, there were certain things that he already had in his mind. And so I just wanted to make it out the moment, right? So I put my hands on the car and I let him pat me down. I let him pat me down. He went back, and we went to the back of the car, and he started talking, and he kept asking me question after question after question. Now, mind you, I just woke up, right? And I just got back on the road, so it wasn't 100% there. But I remember I did get irritated, because I was like, I need to get on the road. I don't know why this is. I'm outside, sitting outside of the car, And so I remember after a few questions, I was like, can you just tell me why you pulled me over? Because, I was getting frustrated, but I still, kept my tone in the respectful manner that I could, because I wanted to survive the moment. You could always file the complaint later, right, the next day. And so basically he told me that he pulled me over because my tag was crooked. And so, I said, oh, okay. So I was like, what's the problem with the tag being crooked? And he basically told me that, sometimes, people steal cars and they just put on one screw. And that's why, he thought, the car possibly was stolen, right? I think I was driving an Acura TL at that time, young black man, luxury car, so, you can decide whether it was profiling or not. But once again, I had to survive the moment. And so I just want you all to know, unfortunately, we live in a world where police have guns. Unfortunately, we live in a world where police have the authority to use their guns. And unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of times the police and society view us as black people more of a threat than they do as citizens of the same society that they live in. And so we have to be very careful when we are interacting with the police. But I'm not putting the whole onus on us. We also have to be, because we are the ones negatively affected by these interactions, we have to make sure we stay on top of our legislators. We have to make sure that we are making sure that they put policies in place to protect those people of color, so we don't have to go through any more mourning, so we don't have to go through any more hashtags, because killing us, it just simply has to stop. And so once again, my name is WaleAde, and this is another edition of Religion and Politics. And I just wanted to say, I love doing these videos. I love talking about issues. If there's anything that you want me to make a video about, when it comes to pastoring, or when it comes to Christianity and society, this is Religion and Politics, let me know in the comments. Once again, this is a self-supported ministry, so I would appreciate it, if you show some love, either by liking, subscribing to the channel, or sharing this content. And if you're really feeling the love, go ahead and bless the Cash App, so that we can continue making content like this. And I assure you, I will do everything in my power. A lot of times I go to city council meetings. A lot of times I have gone to Board of Education meetings, because my people matter to me, and the things that we go through matter. And I believe that, as pastors, as people of God, that we are here not only to be concerned about people's life after death, but we should be concerned about people's life while they're still here on this earth. And so once again, this is Religion and Politics. My name is WaleAde, and I will see you on the next episode. God bless.